Funniest things I remember.
When
his grandfather.
When I changed your diapers.
I remember grandfather making me homemade beer
Yeah.
in the basement. We're sitting around it with grandfather. We're sitting around a
And
table,
wine.
and we had one of the premier preachers from Calvary Baptist in New York, a missionary, Doctor. What was his name? From China, Inland China Mission. He was
I
quite
forget
famous.
his name.
Yeah, I do too.
We used to go over to
He
hear
come
him
there,
preach.
we're sitting there, and grandmother cooked a nice dinner. All of a sudden, we hear boom, boom, pow, boom. All the beer exploded in the basement. Kaboom! Marty, what is that? Oh, it's nothing, Rudy. Don't worry about it. It's blowing up. It fermented to tell them to blow.
He
And
used
it
to-
went,
oh.
went.
He used to like
He said, Marty, I
wine.
think it's your beer. Stop.
He made root beer. We did that. We made everything.
Oh, I figured, oh, great. Ice cream soda or something, he says to me. I think it's time you had your first drink.
He did?
Yes. No.
My father?
A whiskey sour.
My father.
Yes.
That old bugger.
A whiskey sour. I said, grandfather. He said, no, it's okay. You're old enough. Have a whiskey sour. I think you might like it. Well, my mother liked whiskey sour. So he said, put a little more sugar in it. I don't know. I remember that. As clear as anything.
I did. I don't
Apparently no
remember
drinking.
my
He said
father
to me,
really
okay.
ever
Yeah.
being a drinker.
He
He
said-
liked a glass of wine, a glass of beer, but
you can go
I
home.
never went.
We're going to go home from here.
Hidden depths.
So, I don't know.
See, honey, it's okay if I drink. My father did. You'll never find a better man than that man.
No, he was great.
He told me I used to go into work with him occasionally on a Saturday, and you know these guys would come up, like, panhandling money, and he'd say, "Are you hungry?" "Oh, I'm starving." "Come on, I'll take you in a restaurant. I'll buy you a meal." And of course they wanted money for food. He'd say,
Wow.
"Never give him money, but take him in and buy him a meal."
I remember the knocks
Saved a lot of
on
money
the,
that
on the
way.
door of the house. I told Lily, knock on the door of the house, and we'd be having dinner. He'd go in and there, and he'd say, "I'll be up in a minute. Rooney, bring a meal down." And he'd take the person downstairs. He had a shower downstairs in the basement. Let him clean up. He had clothes as he might fit them, and replace the clothes they had, and feed him, and then the person would go on his way. Yeah, you know.
When he died, went to the funeral parlor. People I didn't know at all came over and told me, "You know, your father was a great man." They would tell me things he did for him. One man, he bought him an artificial leg, and it was a wonderful thing to hear.
What
He-
was his
he was a-
profession?
Huh?
What was his profession? How did he provide?
Insurance.
He actually, what happened to him, when he was supposed to graduate from school, not high school, public school, that was pretty far in those days. The months before graduation, he left school so he could get out before the rest of the kids to get a job. And he got a job with the insurance company, just doing this, that, and the other thing, and he gradually got into doing bookkeeping. He wound up as comptroller of the company.
Yeah.
Really a self-made accountant. And then eventually he bought the business with two other men. And he also sold a little insurance, but his main thing was the accounting end of it.
He had bought
Figures
lots
like
of
that.
stock on the recommendation of Bellinger, the man that owned it, all right? And the market crashed.
Yep.
And I don't know how many men jumped and shot themselves and whatever.
He waited it out.
He held on to every single share of stock. And ultimately it all came back, and that's how he ultimately was able to
In New York.
retire and live.
In New York. His boss,
I thought he worked for Lee and Perrin.
Lee and Perrin, yeah.
W.L. Perrin and Son.
Perrin and son, but the guy by the name of Bellinger.
Bellinger, right. They
Big
owned it.
honcho.
But they said they called my father in, they thought highly of him. And he said, "Martin," he said, "go out and borrow as much money as you can borrow he said, buy all the stock you can buy of the best companies. And my mother, in those days, you know, you didn't buy a car unless you had the money.
Yeah.
Today,
I think he's gonna
Didn't you
smack
let him
you.
drive the car once?
oh, you know, yeah, we up there, we drove, you know, it was
I got a story.
dirt roads. My brother-in-law, Mike, he used to park behind the
What,
barn.
you
It was an
recording
old
this
barn,
now?
and I used to drive. So then I got my license, and his mother had a car with a fancy horn on it. Remember the stick shift?
Oh, yeah.
And he had it. And I was going down the river fishing, and we decided to
Chevrolet.
take Barbara Carey with us, who
Yep.
was sort of kind of like his girlfriend, and she was built like the proverbial, you know. But anyhow,
Not high.
but anyhow, we're going along the river, and we get way below the car. And I came out on the road, and I said to Herbie, I wanted to make Herbie look big, you know. I said, Herbie, go get the car. So Herbie says, okay, Uncle Marty. So he goes up. and
Uncle Marty.
He's driving down the road very careful, way over to the side, and there's a culvert that's gone. All of a sudden the car goes, bloop. What do we do now? Oy, 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 oy.
We
That's
got it
Jewish. Yeah, he got out of the car. Remember that? We jacked it up.
We got it out. We didn't have a problem. Remember though, we were going up the road,
That when the
up to the
batteries
big
fell
house,
out.
and he says, always blow the horn in these turns. So we're going around the turn, I go, boom. So he says, let me check, 607. Takes the floorboard off, that's where the batteries were. There was no battery.
No battery.
It was back down the road. The whole brace had rusted out over the end. So we get the battery, we put it back in there. He
Al
says,
Furban.
hold the
Remember?
pliers, and the wife said, not me, you. So he's got the wire, he got pliers holding that wire, and I go, almost electrocuted him. Hey, I had my
I was gonna
chance.
say, what
I had my chance, and I turned the key.
But we did. We got it up the
We
hill
got it
that
up.
way.
Yeah, we got it up there.
All his hair fell out after that.
What we did was we laid some change for snow that were in the trunk in there so we could lay the battery
Oh, we
down.
had such fun.
He burned the old winter grass off during the war. And I said, Grandfather, what are you doing? He said, we're just going to get rid of all this grass. I said, wasn't it over there you buried all those gas cans? Oh, get the hose! What hose? We didn't have a hose.
He had,
We had to
you
bring
couldn't
some
get
water.
gasoline, he get on a black bug, he had it all over the side of the mountain.
No way!
We're trying,
Yeah,
we're
my
trying to
father
we're trying to get the bushes to stop burning. And he's yelling, I think there's one over here. Oh, man.
That's the
Angry at one stage of thing. He'd tease me, he'd be, you know, that. And the expression he used, can I say it?
Yeah, we're okay.
Herbie Werby, shitting his father's derby.
I never said
Yes,
that.
you did.
Oh, I wouldn't say a thing like that. Not my father's derby.
I-
He's terrible. He's terrible. He's got a good imagination.
Don't listen to that.
That's not imagination, that's reality.
Well, she was talking about Texas and pistols,
Oh, golly.
and one day I was in the office and
You
this
tell,
lady-
tell how you used to hunt for
Yeah,
fish.
I'll tell him. You'll use you for that too. And she had a pocketbook on the table, and I wanted her to get on the table, so I picked up a pocketbook. I said, "What, you got a gun in here?" She took it out of my hands, opened it, pulled out a .38. I said to
One
her,
of his patients.
Oh,
what,
yeah.
what do you do with this? Oh, she says, I'm from Texas. Everybody has a gun in Texas. I says, you're in New York State now. Can you, you know, just a
Jersey.
joke. Who? I never expected the gun to come
Pulls out a
out.
gun.
Well, yes, I do.
You know, I said, you don't have to pay. Yeah, okay, Dad, I'll take the card. He says, okay. So I took the card. I went down the barn, I got down there, and I said, geez, I never backed the car around. He said, New Plymouth with the stick on the... So I got it around, I came in, he says, how do you get back so quick? I thought I took the car. He says, you bug me. Don't you ever do that. He was joking with me. Don't you ever do that again.
You remember, you were,
And it was, she and I were like this, you know, because we were the closest.
Close.
So this is in New York City now, and I'm down in the basement, and at the end of the basement, I had this target about this big, got a wood newspaper, so 22 couldn't go through it. And right behind that was my father's wine cabinet. And I used to shoot, so my sister came down. And he said, I want to shoot. I said, no, you can't shoot, you'll miss the target. I want to shoot. And he had one bottle of wine that he was saving for a special occasion. I guess when he felt like drinking it or something. And I said, no, you can't shoot. She said, oh, here. So he, pow! She shot her favorite bottle of wine. She missed the target, that big. And she's only shooting from here to the end of your kitchen. Anna,
the thing that used to... People don't believe it. Do you remember going up in the big house under the floor, the other house under the floorboards, and the twin pistols we found? And the buckskin suit?
That was in the old
Sure,
farmhouse.
and they were given to the museum, with the Cody Museum, because they did belong to, not Cody, they belonged to,
They belonged to his father, the painter.
Yeah.
They belonged
William
to
de
William de la
Montagne.
Montagne
Carey, but he was giving
a
them
friend
to
of
him.
Bill Cody.
no, but the person who gave them to him was one of the guy that rode the mail.
I
First,
think your husband was in.
Oh,
I
that's a
can't-
motorcycle, yeah.
can't think of
That's
his
you?
name right now.
But you know, this
Yeah, that's a motorcycle.
this man, Clint Carey, his name was, his father was
I
William
wish I
de
could
la
find those
Montagne
pictures.
Carey, and he was an itinerant
Lexus,
artist
yeah.
out west.
Uh-huh.
He'd come home to make a
Lexus,
baby, then he'd
yeah.
go out west again.
Huh?
My son loves his
But that's
dad.
the way they
Yeah,
were. They
yeah,
were,
that's
they
good.
were, they were married, but in a way, those artists were sort of bums. And Herbie and I, we were typical kids. And it was a rainy day like this, worse than this. And this was across the street, an old farmhouse. And we went up in the attic, and we were looking underneath, and we pulled out these 3 pistols.
Colts.
2 of them
It
were
holsters
so
and all.
rusty,
Did he shoot any at you?
so rusty that they would break in half, but one of them was his father's dress pistol. It was a beautiful thing, nickel plated and everything. And I took him over to him, and this man treated me like a son. He took me up there when my parents didn't, and he was always, I thought, oh boy, maybe he'll give me this pistol. He didn't, but he did. He had, he had an egg collection, and he had trampons that you put on your feet. And he used to tell us stories about how they'd go visit somebody, like come to your house and say, you've got pillars, and he'd see a nest, and if he didn't have the egg, you'd come out the next day, and the nest would be gone. You'd say, what happened? You'd see these claw marks off the pole.
Climbed up again.
He gave that to the Smithsonian Institute. He gave his father's buckskins. He gave him
Well, grandfather's a picture
So many-
grandfather had I
yes.
can't find.
no, but he gave everything to
buckskin?
the
In the
Smithsonian.
buckskin with the twin pistols.
And one time
on
he
it.
took me down. He owned a house on the Jersey Shore,
I told you, I was
beautiful
looking
home.
for that. Never
and he
did
took
find
me
it.
out, my father and I, up in the attic, where he had all these canvases from his father. And you know, artists, he's Richard here. Artists in
Yeah.
those days, they
Myron.
make a sketch, and they paint a little bit on this one, and then they'd stop and they paint it. And a lot of them were unfinished, but he had some of the most beautiful. Well, some of them were sort of bloody because they were really actual pictures of the West. The paintings were beautiful. And he used to sit in our living room and tell us stories of his father. Oh, you
Yeah.
weren't there.
Yeah.
Like, I had a rattlesnake tail from him, it fell apart, and maybe it wasn't true. But when his father went out west, They traveled pairs usually. When they slept at night, they actually had their one foot tied to a stirrup in the saddle because they're in Indian country, and a horse would wake him up. And he woke up in the morning, and it was cold, and a rattlesnake was curled up on the chest of his friend. It was warm. And supposedly, if his friend woke up, he would have been struck in the face. Supposedly, that was I had the tail of that snake that he shot off his friend's chest with a pistol. Good story, you know.
Sounds
But-
like a cowboy story.
Sounds like, yeah.
He went in an Indian village. This is thinkable, believable. And this was a squaw was sitting there in front of the teepee, and he wanted to paint her, but there wasn't enough color to it. So he took an Indian blanket that was colorful and draped it over her shoulders, and he painted it. And from then on, no matter where he went, this Indian woman followed him. And he was sort of a neophyte. And he said to this other guy, well, why is she following me? He said, you married her. He said, you showed her a kindness.
That's how you do it.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
a ring,
Wow.
it's a
It sounds
a
like
shawl.
And a lot of, some of his
Yikes.
paintings were historic.
That would have been helpful to know.
And he did a lot of illustrations, a lot of books he
Cultural.
illustrated. He illustrated a lot of these pulp magazines years ago about Kit Carson and all those things.
Kit Carson, they were Kit Carson's
Yeah.
twin pistols.
But
Thank you.
He had, he was
Just hate
a
when that
very
happens.
different man, but he was, sense of humor,